Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Budget Finance Economic Development Committee. Today is an exciting day. It is March 31st, and we are beginning our deliberations for a very important journey we're going to take on the mayor's budget for fiscal year 26. It is now, what time is it? 9:08 a.m. And I'd like to welcome all of you to this online meeting being conducted with the Sunshine Law. And as a reminder, when your name is called for members, if you're not here in person, please let us know if there's
guests, and let's have a really good meeting. Thank you.
Yeah. And we have member U Hodgins.
Good morning, everyone. Yeah. Also, happy belated birthday to Member Johnson. Yesterday was his birthday.
Ah.
Hello, everyone.
Member Johnson. No wonder he's not here. He probably celebrated yesterday. Okay, let's go. Member Johnson, happy birthday to you.
Well, thank you, Chair, Council members, community members. There's no testifiers over here at the Lanai District Office. I'm alone on my side of the office. Although I wasn't alone this weekend, Councilmember Tom Cook and Councilmember Rollins Fernandez came to Lanai for the blessing of the ceremony of the skate park. What a great event. And also thanks for joining us in person at the public discussion, public meeting on Friday. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, happy birthday. Yeah, nice to see you. Next, we have Member Rollins Fernandez.
Aloha kakahia kakako, my Molokai Hina. I'm at my private residence alone, and there are currently no testifiers at the Molokai District Office. And this weekend was fun. Mahalo, Member Johnson, for hosting us. It was a great event, and happy belated birthday.
Ah, nice. Member Paulton.
Yeah. Aloha kakaya kakako. Streaming live and direct from the Pili at my kitchen table. I have one unnamed minor canine with me today, and everybody else is at work and school.
Ah, very good. Member Senensi.
Aloha kakayaka, and yeah, here at my home office, I'm here by myself. No testifiers in Hana, and happy belated birthday, Councilmember Johnson.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing what Chair Lee gets us all to do? We kind of look forward to it. Yeah. Yeah. From the Office of the... Thank you also, Peter Hanano and Rochelle Kawasaki, which is legislative attorney, and Rochelle is our deputy director for council services. Leigh Deneen is out in the lobby for council services assistant clerk. Thank you, everybody, for working hard to get us to this point. Today is a kickoff for our journey. The last page of this agenda is information on meeting connectivity. And thank you, members. As you know, today we only have one item on the agenda, which is BFED 1, the entire budget, which the administration has submitted to us. Proposed fiscal year 2026 budget for the County of Maui, BFED 1. Members, I will be taking testimony after opening comments, and the opening comments will come from the Department of Finance as well as from the Council of Revenues. So at this time, I would like to ask that we begin that. But before we do, I wanted to just say that to make sure that this process is efficient, on the 25th, last week, Tuesday, we had a BFED meeting to talk about what you would or would not like in behalf of, from the departments. And so today, for your information, we are going to be implementing those comments so that we can have a more efficient budget process. But what I did ask the finance department to do for the countywide expenses and the revenues is to do a PowerPoint presentation because of the details and what it involves. And when we get to the department, which is Department of Finance, that will be verbal. So just the magnitude of those two important aspects of our budget will be PowerPoint presentations so that you all have it. Did we make copies for the members? No, copies, yeah. You're gonna pass out copies for everybody. Okay, so staff is gonna pass out copies, or to all of you if you have not gotten it already. Oh, I was the last one to get it. Okay, so the PowerPoint presentation, did you get copies of this? Can you make copies? Did you get copies for everybody? It is on Granicus, but just so that it's easier for you, so you can mark up paper. Okay, staff is passing out the presentations, which is on the countywide costs, and the other one is the revenues. Okay, as that's being passed out. So as you requested, there will be no PowerPoint presentations from the departments in terms of their operations. And if there are any additions or changes to their department as it relates to a financial aspect, that will be presented to you verbally, but we won't have PowerPoint presentations. So we'll be reviewing all elements of their budget, including the revolving funds that they manage when the department comes up. And you also see that on April 16th on our calendar, we have revolving funds, but that will only be for revolving funds that we did not cover when the department came up. So I think it's a natural instinct for you members when you see a department come up, if you know they have revolving funds, you're going to ask them, what about the, what about the affordable housing fund and whatever. So we thought we would take care of it when that department comes up. But if there's anything that we did not cover for additional deliberations, we did set aside April 16th, just for clarification. So as a reminder, please check Granicus for updates. We've already started receiving responses from the departments on the initial question. I think there's liquor in there. Of course, finance, thank you, Marcy Martin, for answering those questions very quickly. I think there's one that you haven't yet because we just sent it to you. That one, we expect that one is a deep dive that the members took. So that will be available for you to check. As a reminder, today's meeting, we hope to end at 1:00. We can go longer than that and take a lunch break and come back if we need to. But our goal of our meeting ending at 1 o'clock today was so that you can finish off all the questions for the remainder of the departments that you have not finished yet, or it's actually due at 4:30 this afternoon. So we wanted to leave you some time to continue doing the deep dive of the departments. And those departments are the ones that we are meeting from April the 7th and on through the 17th. So those departments, your questions are due this afternoon at 4:30. Our schedule for today will be as follows. We'll have presentations from the finance department, presentation from the Council on Revenues, so we can take a look at what our TAT and GET looks like from that perspective. And then we'll ask members questions on the Council of Revenues, and then we'll go to Finance Department. So the Council of Revenues person is joining us at 10 o'clock from Oahu, and so we'll hear his presentation last after Finance, and then when we go to questions, we'll start with him first. So at this time, I'd like to invite Director Finance Marcy Martin to introduce her staff, followed by presentations from the estimated revenues and countywide costs, and a recap of the department's budget.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to present the Department of Finance portion of the Mayor's proposed fiscal 26 budget. Deputy Director Maria Zielinski will be presenting on revenue and the countywide budget, and I will be presenting on the department's budget. Today, we have Carrie Stockwell, our Real Property Tax Administrator, and Nicole Ricks, TAT Revenue Manager, in addition to other agency staff to serve as references. Thank you.
Okay. Would you like to do your presentation on behalf of the department for revenues, estimated revenues and countywide costs, and then your department presentation, Director, after that?
Good morning. Maria Zielinski will be first. Oh, excuse me.
Can I ask a question to the director? Real fast. Director, you mentioned there were other staff online or behind us?
Behind.
Oh, okay. And then you have the director, the budget director too, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Did you want to introduce your other staff in the chambers?
Thank you, Chair. So I have Lito Villa, the administrator from DMVL, Department of Motor Vehicles and Licensing. Jared Masuda from Purchasing. Steve Tesoro from Internal Controls. Marcy Sato from Accounts. Guy Hironaka from our Land Management Agency. And Dulce Pate, our Personnel Officer. And we have Mark Pagal, our Assistant Administrator from Accounts, and Jack Culp from Treasury. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so now you can proceed with your, is this countywide you're starting with?
No, I've been asked to start with revenue.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, so this is the estimated proposed revenue for fiscal '26. So the first slide is showing the county sources of revenue. So $1,512,277,295. As you can see from the pie chart, the lion's share is general fund revenue, and it's primarily taxes, real property tax, TAT, GET, and carryover. We'll be going into these as we go into the slides. That's the primary. The secondary is water fund, so that's any water services, miscellaneous, that sort, and carryover as well. Last, or not last, but the third is bond and lapse bond revenue. That's $1,124,434,000. And then following those, you have way tax, fuel tax, franchise, and other services. Sewer fund services. The next pie chart is just showing your general fund revenue. As again, this is all estimated, this is all proposed in the budget. $991,923,997. And here you can see that taxes comprise almost 80% of the revenue in the general fund. And that, again, as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, is primarily, there's lots of other things, but real property tax, TAT, and GET, those are the significant revenue sources. Second, actually, is our carryover savings. You'll actually see that our carryover savings were $122.9 million. So just wanted to highlight those two items. The next slide, which actually Director Martin will discuss a little more, I don't know if you want to do it now or now. Okay, I'll just mention that on this slide for the proposal, we are looking at changing the tiers under owner-occupied. The only changes that are being proposed are on owner-occupied. The tiers are slightly changed, so the first tier would be to 1.3 million, second tier 1.3 to 3, and then greater than 3 million on the third tier. And they all went down in rates by 10 cents or 15 cents for the greater than 3 million. But I'm going to pass this on to Director Martin.
Thank you. So real property assessments did increase this past year. Values have been increasing over the past 5 years, and this year's increases are similar to the increases in fiscal '24. Maui has been very proactive in mitigating resident tax increases with rate and tier adjustments combined with targeted tax relief. The home exemption was increased to $300,000 in 2023, making it the most generous in the state. The Tier 1 owner-occupied rate was $2.51 in 2020, $1.80 in 2024, and is proposed to be $1.70 in 2025. The owner-occupied real property tax rate is also the most favorable in the state. Our long-term rental rate is also very favorable at $3. And this year, in June 2024, Ordinance 5681 was passed, which increased the circuit breaker tax credit and eased qualifying criteria to match increasing assessments. I want to take this opportunity to confirm the department's commitment to work with Budget, Finance, and Economic Development Committee after assessments are certified on April 17th to implement a real property tax levy that meets the county's revenue needs while reflecting the council's tax policy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you done? No, right?
Yeah, no, we're going on now. So the next one is actually Transit Accommodation Tax, or TAT. The proposed estimated revenue for, oh, I skipped one, yeah. Oh, it's going forward and should be going back. Just give me a second here. Okay, hopefully it doesn't move. Okay, the proposed revenue, it's got a mind of its own. Yeah. It's not showing up there. Oh.
Okay, let's just stop and read. Oh, there you go.
Okay, thank you. So on TAT, we're proposing revenue of $65 million. As you may recall, our adopted budget was actually at 60. We're estimating $65 million for this fiscal year, for fiscal 25, and we're looking at similar for fiscal 26. Here's the thing. It's very mercurial. We've seen, I'll give you an example. In January, our TAT was 7.6 million just for the month, okay? If you annualize that, just to give you an idea, it's like 91 million. So that's, but of course, this is reflective of during the Christmas, the holiday period. Just recently, now from March, it looks like it's at 6.5. So that's pretty good. If you annualize 6.5, it's at 78 million. So, but having said that, you know, we know there's lots of uncertainties. TAT is, you know, I've heard both sides. It can be higher, it can be lower based on, you know, what the political climate is. So we felt it was most conservative to go with the 65, which is comparable with our actual right now. And I think one of the council members had asked, as of 3/28, the total TAT that we received was 52.5. That was one of the letters that came in on Saturday night, just to give you that. Okay, next one is Public Service Company. And on the PSC, we're proposing $8 million in revenue. That's also comparable to what we're estimating for fiscal 25. It is $1 million higher than what we budgeted. We budgeted $7 million. So we are seeing some positives. Again, on this one, I know some of the council members were asking about, because it's a utility-driven revenue. However, you know, at this point, we don't know if there'll be any impact as a result of, you know, with the fires and everything. But we felt, again, that we're being very conservative with sticking to what we had for this fiscal year. Okay, next one is general excise tax. On this, we're looking at $70 million as a proposed revenue. As you can see, our budget was actually $60 million. Our estimated actual is 70. So we, again, wanted to stick to something that was close and conservative to what we've experienced for this fiscal year so far. Okay. Next one is highway funds. So we're looking at total revenue for highway fund of $100,741,006. On highway fund, the largest actually is the largest source is actually interfund transfers, and part of that is because the carryover that was realized in our highway fund was actually lower than we had anticipated from the previous year, and Public Works actually did have higher expenditures. That was really the reason for the lower carryover savings. That's followed by weight tax, which is comes in at 27 million, as you can see on the pie chart. And third is fuel and franchise tax. That's 25.5 million. And then we have the carryover savings of 11.2. Next is fuel tax. We're looking at $15.5 million for fiscal 26. That's comparable, it's exactly comparable to what our estimate is for fiscal 25 and also what our budget was for this year. So no change on the fuel tax on the budget. Public transit bus fares, we're looking at $1 million as proposed revenue. And this is kind of interesting. I guess personally, I didn't expect it to be, as you may recall, you can see from this chart that for fiscal 25, we budgeted 500,000, and yet it looks like our estimated actual is coming in at $1 million, which was kind of surprising because, you know, we do have so many reductions as far as, you know, based on, you know, people that are exempt from paying on the bus fare. But my understanding, at least I was told, that they believe it may be from tourists that we're getting that revenue. But nevertheless, we're looking at $1 million also for fiscal 26. That's what we're estimating. Next, didn't go in. Oh, franchise, it's a little delayed. Franchise tax, we're looking at $10 million for fiscal 26. Our estimate is actually slightly higher, $10.5 million. We budgeted 9. Again, we wanted to be somewhat conservative, so we went with the 10. So slightly shy of what we're estimating. Street use weight tax, we're looking at 27 million for fiscal 26. I'm sorry, did I say, yeah, 27 million. Okay, I got the 26 and the 27 confused. 27 for fiscal 26. And we're looking at, our budget was 26.775, so very, very close. And our estimate is 27 million. So we're not looking at any change from what we're anticipating for this fiscal year. Sewer fund, we're looking at 87.903,633, 87 million. On this, sewer and cesspool charges, or charges for current services, are the primary sources. That's at 65.764 million, and after that, that would be the state revolving fund. So you see other intergovernmental, that's the 11.9. That's what that represents. And then carryover savings of 10.239. Sewer, cesspool, septic, and reclaim fees proposed amount. We're showing, or we're estimating, $65,764,041. This is higher than what you'll see that we're estimating for this year, which is 60 million, and what our budget was, which was 63.1. So you can see that our estimate is less than what our budget was for fiscal 25. Sewer has actually included, I'm sure when they meet with you, they'll talk more about it, but they're including a 9% rate increase in the sewer fees. So that's what that higher revenue number for fiscal 26 is reflective of. Solid waste, we're looking at revenue of $46,589,979, and that's primarily refuse collection, disposal, and landfill. That comprises $26.345 million, or 56.55%, and then that's followed by interfund transfers and carryover savings. Landfill tipping and permit fees, and we're proposing 15.275 in revenue. and for fiscal '26. And you can see that is higher than what our budget was, which was 13.95 in '25, and what our estimated actual is, which is 14. So you can just see from the bar graph, our estimate for '26 is higher. And the reason here is there's also a contemplated rate increase of going from $106 per ton to $110 per ton. So again, the revenue is reflecting that increase. Refuse collection fees proposed amount is $11,070,000, and that's a little higher than what we've actually budgeted. Our budget was 10.467. Our estimated actual is 10.5. We are looking at a slight increase in that for fiscal '26. Water supply fund. We're looking at total revenue of $136,630,282. The lion's share of the water supply fund is from current charges for current services, and that comprises $88,240,000, or about 65% of all of that revenue. That is followed by actually carryover savings that was in water fund and special assessments. The water service fees, the amount I just mentioned a little while ago, which is $88,240,000 for fiscal '26. As you can see, that's also higher than what our budget was, which was budget and estimated actual are both 74.240. So the reason for the increase is there's also a rate increase that's being contemplated here, and I believe it's a tiered rate increase, so based on usage, which I would suspect the water director will provide more information on. And that concludes the revenue section.
Are you also doing the countywide? Okay, Deputy Director.
Okay. Okay, Chair will be reviewing the countywide expenses now. So then, again, these are proposed estimated expenses for countywide costs. The top sheet is actually, as you probably have seen in the budget book, the bottom line here is that countywide expenses have increased by 15.9%, or 58 million. I'm going to go through the components, but the big pieces are fringe benefits, bond issuance and debt service, OPEB costs, and general excise. So just wanted to just give you a heads up, but we'll go through these, the significant ones. Under fringe benefits, which you've seen before, I know, ERS contribution, that's our pension plan, FICA, your Social Security, which and Medicare, which is withheld from your people's payroll, but also we pay into it, we match it. EUTF, which is the health costs for the employer's share of that, unemployment compensation, terminal pay. The terminal pay I should mention, because you will see that's a higher amount. That's also going to include, or it is including a provision for the collective bargaining unit agreement, which is pending negotiation. That obviously hasn't happened yet, but we wanted to have a kind of a spot to just hold on to some money that we would, when that does occur. So that's an additional provision. Then we also have the ARC, or the annual required payment for the OPEB for our, post-employment benefits, and Section 8 HUD fringes. Okay. So under fringe benefits, the first is ERS. So that's our pension plan. And it may be a little hard to see, but the actual amount that we're budgeting for fiscal 26 is $78.244 million. Right now, I know that they had the folks, the trustees from ERS and EUTF come in. So ERS right now, you may recall, is 63% funded. So, you know, it needs work, and that's why the number is, we're paying quite a bit. I should just mention, ERS, we're not specifically identified as a group of folks. In other words, the demographics are not necessarily, Maui County is not specifically identified like OPEB is. So when you see the OPEB numbers, you're going to see we have the benefit of being Maui County and what we're paying, and we're getting direct credits. ERS, we just make a payment, and we're just a percentage. So based on how good or bad we are, it doesn't matter. So that's kind of the reason why, you know, ERS is a big number. It's a big nut that we have to pay. It is somewhat higher than the previous year, 71.8. The next is FICA. So that's a straight calculation of payroll and what the employer matches. So right now we're looking at a budget provision of 15.372 for fiscal 26. That compares to 14.1 million in fiscal 25 for this current year. Again, you would expect that because there's payroll increases and that sort of thing. EUTF. So you see on the EUTF, it is going up. Now this is the EUTF, this is not the, this is just our straight health plan. So what we pay for, this is not the OPEB piece of it. So this is just what we're paying for employees, for our employees. So the expenditure is $27.5 million for fiscal 26, and that's based on what they've provided to us as estimates, and that compares to 23.6 in fiscal 25. So again, healthcare costs do increase, and this is making a provision for anticipated increases. The terminal pay is what I mentioned to you. That's why you see that huge increase to $12 million. You can see the terminal pay has run about 2 to 3 million. This one was 12, and that's just basically a placeholder for the bargaining unit once the increases are, you know, or the bargaining unit increases have been approved and finalized. The ARC is the amount of unfunded liability that we have to pay. So this is the amount that every county has to pay, but based on their demographics. So this year, for next year, I should say, EUTF is telling us that we'll be paying $38,095,000, okay? This year we paid, or we estimate that we're paying, or we adopted, I should say, $38,085,000. So it's only $10,000 more. But here's the interesting thing. I listened to what the EUTF Derek Mitsuno had mentioned, and he said that because we're paying so much money into our OPEB fund, and as you know, we'll pay that down, I think by 28. I have it written down. I think it's 20. Oh no, it's 29. Sorry. This amount will decrease to 13 million. Now, this is just our regular ARC. This is not the OPEB, which will go away totally. But this number will go, he said, to 13 million in 2029 once the unfunded liability is done. So that's a significant savings. I mean, we're talking $25 million that we'll save on the ARC, on the OPEB. So, you know, it's very positive. The bond issuance, we're looking at a bond flotation cost of $450,000. I think in the previous years we used $400,000. We just figured, besides everything costing more, but you know, all the additional disclosure that we probably will have to do relative to, you know, Maui and the fire and all of that stuff, we increased it by $450,000 just to be safe on that. Now, the debt service payments, we're looking at interest of $16,999,406, principal of $59,536,819. Now, this principal, not the interest. The principal does include interest for what we mentioned we're going to be, we're anticipating issuing a bond in August of 2025 for, and we're looking at about $264 million. That's the number we're estimating right now. Based on that estimate, the principal amount, the incremental amount for that principal that you see there, the $59 million, that includes 23.2 for the new bond issuance. So just to give you an idea. So without the new bond issuance, it would have been about 30. Well, 36, I'm sorry. Can't see my own writing. And as I mentioned here, debt service payment reflects principal only payment for the August 2025 GO bond issuance. And again, we're estimating $264 million. It's just, an estimate at this point. It's based on what we've paid so far in, as cash disbursements for the CIP that we've paid out, as you folks know, and what budget is projecting for that we'll be needing for CIP CIP that will be bond funded. The supplemental transfers are really basically, you can see there's a transfer to solid waste fund. There is an increase of $4,664,172. Apparently, it's primarily due to operating expenses that have increased by $8.1 million. So that would be reflective of why there'd be additional interfund transfer. EP&S fund, an increase of $1,108,458, and transfer to highway fund, an increase of $16,913,262. Apparently, the carryover for the highway fund was about $6 million less than the fiscal 25. Operating expenses have increased, so by about $11.3 million. So as a result of that, it would necessitate additional supplemental transfers. Insurance and self-insurance, not much of a change here. Workers' comp, no change, $4 million for fiscal 26. Insurance program, 7.6. That's an increase of $1 million from this current year. And self-insurance, no change on that either, $10 million from previous year. Open space, you can see that we're reflecting 1% of anticipated real property tax revenue. So that would be 1%, that would be $6,503,886. Okay. Affordable housing. The budget for fiscal 26 is contemplating contributing 5% of real property tax revenue. That would equate to $32,519,431. That is a reduction from the previous year, this year, fiscal 25, which was $61,402,910, where I believe we had 8% of the real property tax earmarked. Again, keep in mind 3% is the requirement. General costs, no change on our telephone system, $351,000. Rentals and facilities, that increased a little to $1,025,272. And basically, just a provision for additional surveys, appraisals. Our land Guy Hironaka, who handles our land activity, will be probably doing a lot more of that and has been doing a lot more of that. So we wanted to make sure we had a provision in there for that. Also, anything that has to do with landscape maintenance, electric, CAM, anything like that, we wanted to include that as well. Centralized postage, $300,000, we had no change, and no change in grant managing for the $300,000. Emergency fund. We are looking at increasing that to $25 million for fiscal 26. That's an increase from $20 million for fiscal '25. This really brings us, you know, you may or may not recall that GFOA basically says that the optimum is about 20% of general fund revenue. Our general fund revenue, based on that, our emergency fund should be close to $200 million. But this would bring us to about $108 million with what we have right now and then putting in this 25. So we're definitely getting there. I think it's very positive, and I think it's the right direction, and certainly it sends the right message to folks like our rating agencies and other investors. OPEB and managed retreat. The OPEB, we're looking at making a payment of $8,566,147. Now, this is one where, again, you may recall from when Derek Mitsudo from EUTF spoke to you folks. This is an amount that actually many of the counties, the other counties in the state, don't even make these payments. We've been making them pretty much religiously for many, many years. And as a result of this, I'm looking at my unfunded liability, as of fiscal 27, he said we'll only have an unfunded liability of $1 million. That's fantastic. I mean, that's just excellent. We're way ahead of the other counties and state where they're going to be finished 2041. So that gives you an example of how far ahead we are in that. After 2027, this amount will be zero. We don't have to put anything in. And as I mentioned, the regular ARC, just the regular payment will go down from 38 million to 13 million. Huge savings for the county in the future. Managed retreat, we're looking at $2,578,827. There was zero in there for fiscal 25. So, and as you may recall, it's supposed to be 2020. It's supposed to be 20% of TAT. The One Main Plaza lease. We have a lease of $560,000. We added about $10,000 just for provisions for any kind of CAM or additional costs for HOA. And that is the lease, that represents the leases for OED and human concerns. Okay. General excise tax and Department of Hawaiian Homelands. So on this one, we're looking at, because again, keep in mind, we're looking at $70 million for general excise tax. That's what we're estimating for our revenue. Based on the 80-20 split, that would be $56 million. However, you see we have $60,530,047. There was a carryover. There's additional monies that were received that related to general excise tax. So that's the result, that's the additional amount from 56 million to the 60 million. The same thing goes for Hawaiian Homelands. We're looking at a contribution of 15,132,512. Without that additional carryover that we experienced, it would only be 14 million. So some nice additional amounts that are going into both of those funds for payments. And as I say, represents $70 million projected for 2026, and then plus any additional GET revenue from fiscal 24, and that's what I was mentioning, the additional amount that we're paying in. And that's it. Thank you.
Oh, very good. Thank you very much, Deputy Director Zielinski. Appreciate that presentation. And so next we have Kurt from the Council of Revenue. He's standing by, he's ready. Seth Colby, sorry, he's joined the call. Mr. Colby, online. Are you with us?
Hello there. Yep, I'm with you guys.
Okay.
How you doing?
Thank you very much. So members, Do we have copies of his presentation? Oh, good. Okay, Pauline is passing out the Mr. Colby's presentation. Thank you very much. And introduce yourself from Council of Revenues. Give us your title if you could.
Yep. My name is Seth Colby. I am the Tax Research and Planning Officer at the Department of Taxation here for the state of Hawaii. So I manage a research group that looks at issues related to taxation and the overall economy here at the state level. One of the things that we do is we provide all the administrative and research support for the Council on Revenues, which sets the revenues for the entire state. So we have a very good understanding of what's going on at the state level, and that impacts what's going on at the county level. So if I could have the pleasure of just sharing a couple slides on revenue trends with you guys, and hopefully that can help you and make more informed decisions going forward. Does that work?
Thank you. Yes.
Okay, yeah, great. So can you see my presentation?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'm going to start off with this one. Do you see the full screen right now?
Yes, we do.
Make sure. Okay, great. So this is the preliminary comparative statement for each month that we put out at the state level. And what you'll see at the very top is the GET. After that is the corporate income tax, individual income tax, and we go all the way down to the general fund revenue. The official, as of February, our general fund revenues are up 7.25%, or 7.2%, sorry, compared to the previous year at that same time, right? So we're talking all the money from July 1st to February 28th in 2025, fiscal year 2025, and we compare that to the same time frame in 2024. So we're up 7.25%. One of the reasons we are up at the state level in 2025 is we received we had some large collections in our state taxes in the fall, and that was a one-off event. We don't really expect it to happen. So if we adjusted for that, we're up 2.1%. So this is more reflective of the underlying economic activity in the state, which we are pretty much flat on the year if you adjust for inflation. And I'm going to go through the major tax types so you can understand. So GET is up 2%, which I would say is essentially flat, maybe a little bit low if you incorporate inflation, right? So since inflation goes up 2-3% a year, that is automatically taken into account and reflected in our GET tax. Our individual income tax is up 4.2%, and this is probably very relevant for you. Our TAT is down 1.2% compared to the previous year. So that is where we are at the state level. I know you guys aren't that interested in that, so I'm going to go to the two tax types that you guys are probably most interested in, which is the GET and the TAT. So this is state tax collections. This is not by county. I will get there later, but this is how we're doing. So we're doing okay at the very beginning of the year. One of the reasons we were doing better is because August was really bad because of the Maui wildfires, right? So that was 2023, and August 2023. And then this is our current year, right? And then we dip below October, November, and then we've been growing a little bit over the past couple months as we think tourism and everything is starting to stabilize. If we look at the TAT, a similar situation happens, right? We have a kind of a low October, November, December, but things are starting to stabilize as well, right? They're not growing quite as much. We're just having slower tourism receipts than we were before. So this is the GET collections by county, right? And so at the very top, you see Oahu, where most of our GET collections are accounted for. And then you have the orange line is Maui, the green is Big Island, and the blue is Kauai. I want to highlight a couple things. So right around here is 2020 is the pandemic, right? So GET dipped. It dipped. I'm going to concentrate a little bit more on Maui since this is who I'm presenting to, but it really did dip a lot during COVID because Maui's economy is really dependent on tourism. So it dipped more. It basically converged with the Big Island. And then as we came out of the pandemic in 2021, it started to grow again, and it actually was doing better. If you look at the space between the Big Island and Maui prior to the pandemic and after, it's actually a larger space, which means that Maui was outperforming the Big Island and other places. Then you see the wildfires, everything converges once again, and the space between the Big Island and Maui has not gotten as big as it was prior to the fires, right? So there does seem to be some decline in GET revenues at the county level relative to other parts of the state. This is TAT combinations for the county, right? So this is the other big tax that you guys are interested in that is administered at the state level. And I want to highlight a couple things, stories that are apparent here. One is prior to the pandemic, Oahu usually had the most TAT receipts, followed by Maui, right? And then the Big Island and Kauai were farther down here. Everything collapsed. And what you see coming back from the pandemic is actually, for the first time ever, Maui was outperforming Oahu in terms of TAT receipts, right? And then it was on par. So that was pretty unusual. The main reason we think for that is because the type of visitors that Maui attracts tends to be mainland visitors and people from Canada. And they were just much more interested in going to Maui than in Oahu, where we have much more foreign-based tourism, right? So that you can think of the Japanese visitors, which were longer to come back. And then you can see right around here, the Maui wildfires hit, and the gap between Oahu and Maui have accelerated. In fact, they're larger than what they were prior to the pandemic. So that's a, let me see. It's a pretty quick and dirty overview of all of the collections, which I hope helps you, guide you as you guys make big decisions. I'll just end on this. I think it does affect, the state passed the largest income tax cut in the state's history last year, and it will have an impact in Maui, and it will probably have an impact on revenues somehow. We're not sure the size. We're building them in, and this is one of the things we're measuring. But your constituents will have seen if they're wage earners, their withholding tax has already been adjusted, and that will. So starting January 1st, everybody received, depending on their income levels, between like a $30 and $50 increase in their paychecks. That's going to happen continuously from one year into the next until 2031, right? So this will be big. These are the estimated revenue impacts for the state, right? So this is essentially equates to money going back into consumers' pockets. In fact, it's larger because these revenue estimates represent also taking advantage the possible spending increases that would come from GET and just people having more money in their pockets. So wanted to keep you guys aware of that as people ask and things. Each year doesn't feel like a big deal, but over the entire year, it is quite dramatic. So say a family of four making the median Hawaii income of $97,000, right? So that's 2 wage earners and 2 kids. Over that term, would see in 2031, their taxes would be down each year $3,100 about, right? So that's a lot of money for a family of four making in that income class, and that would happen every year. In fact, over the 7 years, the income savings is $19,000, $19,600, something like that. So this is like quite substantial, and you guys should just be aware of that. The state is making an attempt to communicate that to the taxpayer. There's actually, I didn't include it here. They've built a webpage called hawaiitaxcut.org, where people can go learn about the tax cut and actually even estimate the tax savings for each individual family. So as like leaders in the states, you just may be interested in that. That concludes my presentation. It was meant to be short and sweet, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Members, so the thing I want to thank you very much is early on, the committee asked Mr. Colby to be a presenter. He had this wonderful PowerPoint presentation, and I looked at it, I said, oh my God, this is for the legislature in the magnitude of details that I saw, and then you changed it to this. So I appreciate that a lot because it's very relevant to us, and thanks for including the information about the income tax, what's happening with the legislature. So members, at this time, I'm going to open for public testimony and then take members' questions, starting off with Mr. Colby with the Council of Revenues, and then going to, we're supposed to do a finance presentation. Sorry, that's why you're running up the stage. So I'm going to ask Director Martin to talk about her department verbally. We're not having a PowerPoint presentation. So can you proceed? And then we'll go to public testimony.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm just going to discuss the changes to our budget, the major changes, and we're asking for a reinstatement of reductions made in fiscal year 2025 for our A account personnel in anticipation of filling vacancies. We are requesting one expansion position, an accountant 1 to assist the land management agency, and the request is for 8 months of funding. I am pleased to report that the reorganization for the land manager and tax clerk positions was completed in early 2025, and those positions should be ready to fill in the next few months. Those were fiscal 21 and 22 expansions. So the land management agency has been extremely busy this past year, especially with the workload from recovery efforts. And I would like to mention that the EP expansion will show up under accounts, as an accountant position was moved from the administration program to the accounts program. Accounts has also been very busy and must work very hard to meet their strict deadlines. And to illustrate their commitment and work ethic, they completed the CAFR by December 23rd, 2024 this year. So the Department of Finance has several necessary and important expansion requests to our Operations B budget. And in recognition of these requests, we have proposed over $400,000 in savings from the administration program, the Treasury program, and the Real Property Assessment program. So first, we are requesting $85,000 to replace our land management in-house software, as it was not compatible with the Microsoft 365 upgrade. It should be noted that collections for this agency totaled $828,700 from 194 transactions in fiscal 24. We are requesting $775,000 for transient accommodation tax software. This is an estimate. We have just issued the RFP in March 24th, 2025. And as an update, the fiscal 25 office improvement was completed in February 2025. And seating is now fully available for a fully staffed TAT agency. In the second quarter of 2025, fiscal 25, TIT staff mailed out over 2,000 letters for multiple years to taxpayers, some who had never paid. They have been able to collect over $3.5 million in delinquent taxes, penalties, and interest from purely manual efforts. A comprehensive software package will be welcomed and will facilitate collections of $65 million from over 10,000 taxpayers. Treasury is requesting $75,000 for investment advisor expenses, which are based upon assets under management. Our portfolio has increased in size and is projected to continue this increase into the future. In addition, Treasury accepts water, sewer, real property, and refuse payments. And this past year, they implemented 87 new credit card readers and collected $580 million in real property taxes. Real property assessment has a $218,659 request for aerial imagery Eagle View software. Finance is assuming full financial responsibility for the service, which the county has had since 2011. The software is used by environmental management, housing, human concerns management, police, parks, transportation, and the public on MauiPropertyTax.com, and as the GIS imagery mosaic. The super users are finance with 51,000 views per year, planning with 31,000 views per year, public works with 40,000 views per year, and fire with 8,000 views per year. So finance is assuming the contract as real property is the largest user and the master user. Further, the software anchors on the real property GIS parcel or TMK layer. And accounts are available to any agency within the county. I would like to mention that Real Property certified their Certificate of Excellence in Assessment Administration this past year, which recognizes jurisdictions who employ assessment best practices. Also, the equipment request from fiscal 25 has been completed, and now there is seating for the division to be fully staffed. Finally, the department has an office equipment request of $600,000. The request is in the director's account. However, it is for the second floor, which is mostly the accounts division. The request is for new office furniture, as the space is not being used effectively due to the existing furniture configuration. Also, the existing furniture is at the end of its expected life. And this concludes the budget presentation for the Department of Finance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director. All right, now I'm going to open it up for public testimony, and then after we do that, then again start with questions for Mr. Colby from Council of Revenues. Do we have any testifiers signed up?
Chair, one person just raised their hand online. First testifier would be Tom Crowley.
Good morning, Mr. Crowley. We did think we would hear from you.
Aloha, Council.
I'm not going to read.
You knew you would.
I'm not going to read the testimony verbiage because I think you probably have it memorized. But if you could state your name, organization you represent, you have 3 minutes, and you can speak on anything regarding the entire budget.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
I'm Tom Crowley. I'm speaking solely on my own behalf. And this is my 20th budget following what you folks are doing, and you know me well. I enjoyed the macro overview of where the revenues are coming from and how the revenues are being spent. And I always find it fascinating to understand some of these things. I'm going to take you to a really micro level, how one taxpayer, myself, is impacted by this budget. But before I do that, I just want to point out that I noticed that the spending and the revenues for the county have doubled in the last 7 years. So if we go back 7 years, the real property tax revenues were about $320 million, and this year they're $650 million, and the total budget was about $700 million, and this year it's $1.5 billion. So I always want to keep that in mind. Just how quickly we're growing is kind of like staggering to me. I know that this process, you try to make sure that we're spending that money in the right way, and I appreciate following the process from that standpoint. I want to talk about 27,500 homeowners who you heard from real property tax are kind of protected from real property tax increases, except for 146 of those homeowners, of which I am one, okay? Those of us homeowners who live in our homes full time and are granted a bed and breakfast permit, we lose all that protection of being a homeowner. And as a result, for me personally, what it means is you are tripling my property taxes from what they would be as a homeowner. If my property taxes for the upcoming year were calculated as a homeowner, I would pay $2,440. But if calculated as what's been proposed by the mayor, it would be $7,618. That is a 13% increase over last year, and that's on top of the 30% increase that I received the year before. So again, I'm going to ask you to try to do something about this, and I want to point out that it's a policy decision in lowering the rate in the commercialized residential category. It is not a fiscal decision. We are such a manini part of the total budget that you can do this without, saying, gee, we can't afford these revenues somewhere else. You're going to hear from me again during this tax season because I want to point out a bunch of inequities that I cannot do in 3 minutes. I want to point out that other homeowners make commercial uses of their properties, some as large as having an entire shopping center as part of their a homeowner exemption, and they get a homeowner exemption. I'll explain that further in future testimonies. I want to explain that in long-term rentals, there are second homeowners who have a long-term rental on their property for some portion of it, but then get that long-term rate. They get the exemption and the lower long-term rate on the entire property. So again, not equitable with how we B&B owners are being treated. I have more to say, but I won't go past my 3 minutes because I know that your time is important here, and you have far bigger things to think about today than just my little tax rate on my B&B. But I appreciate the opportunity, Chair, to speak to you, and I guarantee you're going to see me again.
Something would be wrong if we didn't see you, Mr. Crowley. And could you submit that in writing to us? Did you?
I eventually will. I don't have it all put together yet, but I will.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much for your homework and your thought process. Members, do you have any questions for Mr. Crowley? Anybody? No? Okay. Oh, Mr. Johnson.
Aloha,
Member
good luck.
Johnson has a question for you.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Mr. Crowley. Thank you for your testimony. Clarifying question. We saw some of the data from the state and the ups and downs of tourism. How has it been the past year for your B&B? Have you noticed a difference in occupancy in your B&B?
Thank you so much for that question, because that was the extra stuff that I didn't have time to fit into my testimony, which is, yes, you saw state data, which didn't look too bad. The state data actually looked, pretty reasonable. Okay, things are down. But I can tell you personally that since the fires, my business has been down by 25%, and I have seen no recovery for that. As I look ahead, currently every one of my B&B rooms is empty. and it's empty now for the next 3 weeks. That has never happened in my history. In 23 years of operations, I have never had an entire month completely empty. And as I look at my bookings going ahead, those bookings are the worst that they have ever been, okay? So on my little micro level, things look horrible in the upcoming year, and they were terrible last year.
Okay, my last clarifying questions. Have you changed your rates to adjust?
So after the pandemic, I was forced to raise my rates by approximately 20% when I know others raised their rates by a lot more than that. I don't know if that 20% increase is what has resulted in my 25% decrease in occupancy rate, but I really don't feel like I can go back to my rates from 2019 with inflation having pushed up, with my tax bill having doubled since that time. So that's what it is. What it is.
Were your guests mostly Canadians or just
Also a great
regular
question.
Californians?
About 10% of my guests would come from Canada, and a number of them have not come back in the last year. And one of them, who stays a month with me every year, has made the statement, I don't know, Tom, about what's happening. I'm not sure if I'm coming this year. And losing 1 month's revenue from one guy is pretty significant. Most of my business does come from California.
Chair Lee.
Thank you.
Morning, Tom. You mentioned that your taxes have escalated quite a bit. So can you tell me what % did your assessment go up? We've been receiving a lot of concerns about that.
Right. So for this upcoming tax year, my assessment went up by 13% on my property, and that's the result. You know, the increased value and keeping the rates the same. My net tax bill is going to go up 13% if we don't change the rates.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any questions for Mr. Colby? Seeing none. Next testifier.
Chair, there is currently no one else who has signed up to testify. Would you like me to do a last call?
Yes, please.
If somebody would like to testify in the chamber, please let staff know, or on Microsoft Teams, please raise your hand. This is final call. 3, 2, 1. Chair, it appears that nobody wishes to testify.
All right, with your permission, members, I'm going to close public testimony and we'll receive written testimony.
No objections.
Thank you. All right, so as I said earlier, I'm going to ask you to ask questions of Mr. Colby from the Council of Revenues, and then we'll go to the departments. So, Member Kama, our Vice Chair, would you like to start off? 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Colby, for your presentation and for making it understandable to us. So my question is, the state wants to put money back into the pockets of, our people. What would you recommend that we do on the county side to put more money back into our people's pockets?
Mr. Colby.
Can't hear him.
Just thinking,
Mr. Colby,
looks like he's
can you unmute
His
yourself?
mic is off.
I apologize about
Okay,
that. You can hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so we really do focus on tax revenues here at the state. So I just wanted to say, please keep that in mind. But one of the things that we do find with tax revenues and with everybody is over the long term, economic growth is the most important things in terms of providing a sustainable fiscal situation for our states, for our counties, and economic growth is really important and benefiting our population as well.
I appreciate it.
I can elaborate. Yeah.
Please.
So, and then what you guys do for economic growth, I think you guys have a better handle on that than I do.
Thank you.
Are you done? Okay. Next we have Chair Lee going down the row here, and then we'll go online.
Mr. Colby, thank you for your presentation. So you gave us information on the TAT and the GET. So is it because you don't necessarily track the RPT? Real property tax?
Yeah, real property tax is not the purview of the state of Hawaii. that's purview of the counties, and I work for the state. And I support the Council on Revenues, which forecast the general fund, and that does not include any of the real property tax. So I am not the expert on real property taxes.
Okay, because you gave us a comparison on the other two, and I just wondered if you were able to give us a comparison on how we charge RPT. But that's all right. Thank you very much. I have no more questions.
Oh, okay. Next, we have Member Cook, Member Hodgins to follow, and then we'll go online with Member Paulton.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Colby. My question, you'd commented about tourism as the primary economic generator on Maui. Do you track construction wages and other industries?
My department does not. We do, at the Council on Revenues, we do discuss construction wages, and we noted that they've been up, and construction activity is actually what's the major driver of our general fund performance right now, because tourism has been relatively flat. But we do not break it out by county, so unfortunately I don't have any information for you on construction wages at the county level.
Thank you, because obviously with our with the Lahaina rebuild, et cetera, it's an anomaly in the rates. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Member Cook, followed by Member Hodgins.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have any questions for Mr. Colby right now, but I appreciate your presentation. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Going online, Member Paulton, Member Johnson, Member Rollins-Fernandez, and Sinensi.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Colby, for your presentation. When you said that some people are going to get some money back, none of like the retired folks who like rely specifically only on like Social Security, that won't affect them, right?
No, because we don't tax at the state, at the state level for individual income tax. We already do not tax Social Security and defined benefit pensions. So if somebody was making living off of most of the retirement income on a 401k, they may receive a benefit there.
So, and then has the state been looking at the revenues in light of, say, the past 2 months and 11 days or so?
It's really too early to tell anything. We are engaged in some research activities where we're going to look at the effects, but to be frank, we're not going to have the results of that for years, not rather than months.
Okay, and then when you were speaking about the difference in the GET and the TAT of the various counties, does the state take into account the revenue that they get from each county? Because, I mean, we're generally speaking, outside of disaster, number 2 behind the city and county of Oahu, and yet, when we came to ask for help last year at the budget, we got nothing. But when Hawaii had volcano, there was assistance. When Kauai had floods, there was assistance. So I just was wondering, your lines show us as a player, a contributor, but we don't seem to garner assistance when our time of need is like other federal disasters that other counties get. And so it feels like it's just take.
I can understand that. Unfortunately, I do not work for the budget department, right? So the budget, I think what you're referring to is you would like larger allocations from the state budget to the county. I don't work for them. What I can say is I do know about the taxes. Up until 2020, the taxes, each county was guaranteed a certain allocation of the TAT. They got away with that during COVID, and then they gave the county's discretion to impose a 3% addition of TAT on that. Maui took advantage of that, so you get all your you get direct taxes for the TA, and then most recently, Maui is the last county to decide to impose a county surcharge of 0.5%. So both of those revenues we can be like detailed about where they're levied, but they go directly to the county.
Yeah, I just wasn't even speaking of normal times. I just was speaking in our hour of need. But thank you. I understand you don't work for the budget office and we just get screwed.
Yeah.
All right, so the buzzer went off, and next we have Member Johnson, followed by Member Rollins-Fernandez.
Thank you, Chair. On one of your slides, I saw PhD. So should I call you Dr. Colby?
The only time people ever call me Dr. Colby was right after I defended my dissertation, and my mom still calls me Dr. Colby. But other than that, please call me Seth.
Okay, all right, Seth. Just trying to find my way. So, you mentioned really something about economic growth and economic activity, and that's kind of where I want to hone in on. Because as a county, we can't change minimum wages, and as the state is having these step increases, I think it's $14 million in the next year, or I'm sorry, $14 per hour, and the next year is like $16 per hour. What do you think that does to, economic activity? Does that give people more disposable income? Are we going to generate more in those GE taxes, or is that just barely even getting them to where they need to be?
So the economic literature on minimum wage is really complex and vast. So let me sum up in 30 seconds. Essentially, Hawaii's, I'm more familiar with Oahu because I live here, but the prevailing wage was over $14 an hour. So if you go to McDonald's, what people are generally offering is at least here in Oahu, it's $16. You guys probably know better. So the minimum wage is actually probably below the market rate. The decision to offer less is sometimes done in family-owned firms and things like that, but generally people weren't paid that. It'll be interesting as with the minimum wage laws we go through 2022 to go past that. Generally what that does is it tends to harm teenagers and people who are right at the border, because businesses, as labor gets more expensive, they tend to substitute it out and make sure that they're hiring the best, right? And so low-income workers, high disability workers tend to actually get hired less. This is what the economic literature finds. And then some people benefit from that. So people have to weigh back back and forth. Generally, if you get too high, you get into really big problems, right? Into the minimum wage. We can't impose a minimum wage of $100,000, right? Because obviously that wouldn't work, right? So we definitely it's just finding the middle ground in that. And that just comes down to policymaking and reviewing the economic literature.
What's your stance on the middle ground?
I think it depends on each county, right? So I do think it was a mistake. I was pretty vocalized, and I think it should have been administered per county. And so each county had the right to administer it. On the Big Island, when they're trying to promote agriculture and the cost of living is substantially lower than all of those, that minimum wage probably doesn't need to be the same minimum wage as in urban Honolulu.
Seth, you're preaching the choir on that one, and my time's up. I really appreciate that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. All right, so next, Member Rollins-Fernandez, followed by Member Sinetsi.
Mahalo. Aloha, Mr. Colby. Mahalo for being with us today and for your presentation. Typical of economists, we generally will hear economic growth is the most important thing, but oftentimes economic growth is encouraged without explaining the full picture, and I heard you say that earlier. like economic growth shouldn't come at the expense of eroding our community by pricing out community members that have lived here for generations. As you noted in your presentation, Maui Island overly relies on one industry, and that's tourism, and that's not economically healthy or resilient. And the growth of tourism has taken a lot of housing that was used for residents, for vacation rentals, for example. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of maybe elaborate a little bit more on economic growth being the most important thing, but not at the cost, not at any cost, not at, the social cost or cultural cost.
Right, that's absolutely correct. So economic growth is one aspect of things. It's over the long term, it's very important in terms of like being able to pay pensions, education, things like that. On the other hand, each community and through a democracy and everything is able to express their values, right? And values is something you pay for. And so how you do that depends on every community. Economics is just really good at like helping people make the trade-offs explicit. So, I could help you if, like you showed, like you're not going to have low levels of economic growth in over 20 years. We could like build a budget around that, right? And then you will have to deal with the implications. So, how you have the economic growth and what are the aspects should be a community-driven process. However, one thing that economics is really useful at is like helping you understand, like, okay, let's say if we restrict growth here in the tourism industry, what would we expect to happen? And that information is not to say what you should do. It's just supposed to inform so community leaders like yourselves can make better decisions.
Mahalo. And so I know that you haven't done analysis of like real property taxes, but in looking at the policies regarding income tax, GET, TAT, I guess some of that shifts accounted for equitable distribution and tax relief for those that are struggling to remain, here. We'll call this place home. And so when doing, developing policy, that should be something that we consider.
Yeah, so a couple of things. One is for low income, or like, we're not even talking low income, we're talking working class families. The largest tax burden is usually the individual income tax burden. And that is paid most by residents, and that is being reduced by the legislator. That will have the biggest salient effect. After that, my guess would be GET. We do provide refundable income tax credits for lower income families, so to offset the burden of the GET. And then in terms of equity, most tourists, which are higher paying, tend to have pay the TAT, and then the property tax. Generally, property tax, people who own property tend to be higher income. I know that's not always the case, and there's different ways to structure property tax to make sure that it is administered equitable.
Mahalo, Mr. Colby.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you very much. So next we have Member Sinensi.
Mahalo, Chair. No questions for Mr. Colby. Thank you for your presentation.
Okay. Thank you very much. So I have a quick question for you, Mr. Colby. Really appreciate this because you made it very focused on Maui County. So the presentation that you just may have heard from the Department of Finance that collects TAT and GET, their estimates were for TAT 65 million for this coming fiscal year, and then GET of 70 million. So what is your assessment of those estimates? What do you see?
Those sound totally within my within the range of what I would expect from memory. You put me on the spot. Normally, I would like to run the numbers myself and say, this is what we think. But that sounds totally reasonable to me.
Okay.
Just notice that I always encourage the state budget and finance to build in wiggle room, right? So like taxes jump around by 5% a year, right? And so over the long term, we're pretty confident about the overall trends in revenues, but year to year, there is just volatility. Sometimes there's a recession, sometimes there's like a massive economic boom, and we can't correct for all of those. So we really encourage budgetary departments to be able to accommodate those.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm going to send you that in writing, that question, so you have time to look at it. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. So, but thank you very much for your presentation. Members, Chair Lee has a question for you.
I had to step away for a few minutes, Mr. Colby, but did anyone ask you about the current climate of the federal government's economic policies and positions, and how that might affect the state of Hawaii, and in particular the county of Maui, especially since we're counting on a lot of federal funds?
Yeah. Great question that has not been issued to me. That's one thing that we're looking at very in detailed. My overall assessment up to now is it's not time to press the panic button. People, like the things that are going on in the headlines, when we drill down into the actual numbers, are not as severe as that. We do expect a reduction in federal funding. To be honest, in every single Republican administration, we usually expect reductions in federal funding because that is their platform. And that is different from the current administration, which seems to be quite different. But up until now, I don't think we haven't really seen any evidence of reductions in federal funding or economic activity in our economic indicators. And one of my jobs is to have a hard-nosed approach. And right now, things are manageable and we can handle it. That may change going forward, but like reductions to Medicare and other aspects of the state budget, the cuts do not seem something that we can't handle.
Hope so, because we're expecting perhaps some unexpected and unwanted changes in social services and programs. So it's not only Medicare and Social Security. It's dealing with the homeless, the hungry, the unemployed, etc. Thank you.
Yeah. And one thing I've been telling everybody is one of the reasons we've had like a lot of revenue gains is the role of the federal government expanded massively after COVID. And we've been states and counties around the country have benefited from that. And right now they're reducing that federal support. And it's something that we should be prepared for. The federal deficit is unsustainable. So regardless of which administration is there, I think over the next 6 to 7 years, whoever's in the presidency, things are going to have to, they're going to have to make some tough decisions, including reducing the social safety net given directly to the states.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Anybody else have questions for Mr. Colby? See none. Mr. Colby, thank you very much for being with us and again for directing your presentation to be so relevant to us. You're like my husband. Once he got his PhD, he doesn't go by doctor. But congratulations on that accomplishment because it takes a lot. So members, at this time, I'm going to excuse Mr. Colby and thank you very much for your presentation. And then I'm going to take a 10-minute break and then go into the departments. So it is now 10:43 and we'll come back at 10:55. Welcome back, members. It's now 10:59, and we are continuing the BFED meeting. At this time, we're going to go into the departments, and if you could, the presentations were with revenues first, and then countywide expenses, and then finance. But Member Kama, you want to take the first round of 3 minutes of questions,
Yes,
and we just
thank
go
you.
down the line?
So I'm looking at the proposed budget that we were given, and I just want to know, in your guesstimation and estimations, because these are just proposed, right? And you kind of use what you've learned from the past years and kind of came up with some formula for you to. So, do you have a margin of error that you may have hit the button, you may not have hit the button, but I mean the target, but what would that, if you had one?
Chair.
Department, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, council member, I mean, I don't know, I couldn't give you a margin of error per se, but, what we try to do is if it's, if it's revenue or expenditure, whichever, we look at the historical, how the experience has been historically. And you can probably see we always try to be conservative. If it's revenue, even though, we might say, we think it'll go higher, but we try to be more conservative and not as aggressive as far as with revenue. I mean, that's the margin of error, is we'll try to stick with something that's more what we're anticipating, what we're seeing historically, and what we're seeing right now, based on the estimated actual. With the expenditures, it's sort of the same thing. Many times we'll hear on expenditures, especially like for things that have to do with leases or whatever, we'll say, well, this is going to go up, so we better put in, additional provision for expenditures. We try to deal with, if we can talk to the folks that are actually where we are spending the money. We'll try to find out, we get information from EUTF on the, on the health side of things, ERS from the pension side, and those are the big numbers. So that's what we do. But I wouldn't say we necessarily from a statistical standpoint do it, that kind of a margin of error. We try to just be very conservative.
Okay. I was just concerned with the amount of carryover savings of $172 million. That's a lot of carryover. That means that we must have had so much money in the budget and we didn't do projects, we didn't buy equipment, or whatever it is that we didn't do. That was still a lot. So as I look at this year's budget, I want to make sure that we go through that without having so much carryover savings. Because to me, if we've got all that money carried over, then maybe we didn't need it in the first place. But thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Member Kama. Next, we have Chair Lee.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your presentations. I think we're all concerned about the high amount of carryover savings, because what it represents to us is that, or to me anyway, the goals were lofty, but the approach or the means to implement was inadequate. And I'm assuming that we still, you probably are not the department to ask, but I'm assuming we still are at the level of about 600 vacancies. How many vacancies do you have in your department?
Chair? Yeah, we have 29 vacancies, so it's about 16.4%. 29 out of 178, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
And before, not long ago, a lot of them had to do with new staff EP that you needed to implement to collect the TAT. Is that correct? So now you're full complement there? You're at full complement?
We have 2 vacancies in TAT.
Mm-hmm. So you've caught up on collecting. Okay. I think, I really believe it seems that we, the budget is just too big for what I believe we can do. And we've received so many complaints about assessments. How much would it cost to implement some kind of refund program?
Department.
Chair, real property tax refund?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure it would cost anything. It would, require, I guess, a legislative act, depending on, it would be more of a tax credit.
A tax credit.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I see. I'm just thinking of various ways to trim the budget, and I don't see that reducing tax rates is the answer necessarily, but a one-time tax refund or a one-time tax credit might be something to consider as a possibility. But you don't have to agree. I don't think you would agree. Well, you have any comments?
Well, a tax credit would be, I'm assuming maybe the same for everybody. It would be a lump sum.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, like it would be like 5% or something like that,
Oh, well, yeah, a percentage would be different.
Would be different.
Yeah. So that would be, the larger taxpayers would get a larger credit if it was 5%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. But that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Member Paulton, followed by Member Johnson.
Oh, okay. Congratulations, department, on all the things. I think last year you had 37 vacancies, and this year 29 vacancies, 13 filled during this year. So that's good to see too in the TAT. I was wondering if you could clarify for me the difference between recruitment in progress versus pending creation of position. Like recruitment in progress, does that just mean it's listed and people can apply, or they've closed it and you're doing interviews?
Department.
Chair? Thank you. So yes, recruitment in process means that the position is ready to be filled. And pending creation, for example, we have the land management. So we've finished the reorganization. So now the position descriptions are getting union consultation and review by personnel to be classified, and then we will be able to recruit.
So the ones that are in progress, you have names already to interview, or has the recruitment closed? Not closed.
It can be both, and some of them are open recruitment because they've been difficult to fill.
Okay, and then when you said you wanted to reinstate the council's cut on the salaries, did that cut prevent you from hiring more than 13 people in this past fiscal year?
No.
Oh, okay. And then the other question I had was the reconciliation process for the TAT. You said that was all done manually?
Yes, here. I'll have Maria Zelensky answer.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Council member, we also have Nicole Ricks, who's in charge of our TAT, but I will say that we have just an access database that was done by somebody on the Big Island, and that's what we're using, because the software we have is a pay portal. That's it. It's nothing. It doesn't do anything. So these folks have actually done this manually. They've sent out thousands of letters. They've been talking to people on the phone, emails, and as a result of their efforts, they've collected $3.5 million. We had some issues where we were concerned that, there was a period we had to get everything done within the 3-year period. If it was too old, we wouldn't be able to collect. They've done that. I'm actually I'd like, if you're okay, to have Ms. Ricks just address that a little more, because she was in the weeds on this and in the battlefield.
Yes, please. One question before that is, is the Access database the software that we're looking to procure for that 775,000 or so?
Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, no, council member, that was a freebie. That was done, it's just done in-house, so that's not something we could sustain. I mean, it wouldn't make sense. We actually have sent out an RFP. We sent it out, actually, it went out on Friday by our purchasing folks, and we're going, we want a legitimate software package. When you're talking about the amount of money and revenue that we get, you need something very serious because, obviously. So anyway, I'm going to pass it on to Ms. Birks.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Thank you. So as Ms. Zielinski said, we sent, or actually I think how Ms. Martin said earlier, we sent out approximately 2,000 letters to various taxpayers that we identified using the Access database who had never paid TAT for from November 21 up through September 24. And we're trying to focus on cleaning up 2021 since that's the 3-year statute that we're running against, as Ms. Zielinski referenced. So we still have a lot of data cleanup to do, a lot of grandfathering that we still have to clean up as well.
Okay.
Thank you so much. I heard the bell.
Yeah. Thank you. So next we have Member Johnson. Member Rollins Fernandez is in transit, so she's not here. Member Cook, Member Hodgins, and Sinensi. Member Johnson.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So for my finance question, it is in regards to the Maui Interscholastic League and expenditures. So that's in 3.39.040 under Admin A. The Director of Finance shall establish a separate account for record all revenues derived from the payment of fees by the Maui Interscholastic League and expenditures made from the fund. B, expenditures from the fund shall be through appropriations set forth in the annual budget ordinance. Is that something that you would like the council to do, or do you folks want to do it? Because I'll just say that the funds that we've been helping support our kids' travel, Lanai, Molokai, have been very successful, and I want to know what you guys think about that question. Thank you.
Department. Go ahead.
Chair. Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. We did receive your question in writing from FN4, and we will respond in writing. I think we'll also consult with the Parks Department as well.
Okay. All right. Well, that was my main question. I just, I mentioned a little bit earlier, but the parents of the kids who travel have expressed, like, first off, it's very expensive to travel, but also how important that fund has been to help them travel. So I'm really curious of what you guys have an opinion on that. So, okay, those are my questions. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Member Cook, then Member Hodgins.
Thank you, Chair. So for finance, the uncreated positions that are funded and have been noted in the past budgets, what's the status of, and if there's like 5 of them, like tax clerk 1, land manager, administrator, who I think you mentioned, tax auditor, tax information specialist 1, accountant 2, federal grants manager. And so, but you don't have to, my question is, can these positions be reallocated or transferred from other divisions and programs to meet the needs in the department instead of requesting for expansion positions? Like, we have these positions that are needed. Instead of getting new positions, can they be reallocated from existing?
Department.
Thank you, Chair. So the 2 positions in TAT are very much needed. Like I said, now we've completed our office renovations. We now have a physical space for them, and we are working with personnel to get those recruited. We are in desperate need for those two. Also, the positions in land management are
So
needed.
I guess maybe I didn't clarify, I should have clarified my question. I acknowledge you need those positions, want to supply those positions, don't want to cut any positions, but there's a lot of vacancies that haven't been filled. And last year, the council defunded but didn't remove positions, and those are being requested to be funded this year, and there's still unfunded positions. I'm just curious, I don't understand. It's like if there's unfunded positions, can you utilize
You mean unfilled?
unfilled? Thank you. If there's unfilled positions, do we have to create new positions?
Department?
Yes, because each position has a position description and a
So that's the key.
location.
Is
and
it
all.
possible to re-describe the positions?
Councilmember, we can re-describe. It's still a long process, though. It's not something, I'll give you an example, and we have it in this budget, is in the director's office in admin, we had an accountant, I think it was an accountant too, and no, it wasn't, it was a clerical position, but we moved that to accounts, and they're in the process of, kind of re-describing that, and it's to an accountant 3, because they desperately need those positions, and they have a better chance of filling them. In ours, we could have used them, but we said, no, it's more important, put it where it needs to go. So that's a good example, but even having said that, it's not like you make a phone call and it happens. Everything takes time, unfortunately, but that's an example of what we've tried to do. We really tried to look at everything. If we have a vacant position and we're not using it and we don't desperately need it, we really tried to really, narrow this down or slice off as much as we could where we didn't need certain positions or expenditures.
Thank you. My time's up. I want you to have all the positions you need.
Chair, may I add one comment?
Yes.
So we also use the DM 89, or the temporary hire process, where we bring in people that maybe aren't interested in the full-time work, and then they can work on those positions temporarily. So we have 2 of those positions. While they're vacant, there's still someone's working in those positions temporarily to get the work done.
Is it possible that those people could become full-time?
No, they're not interested. But
Thank them for the help. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Member Hodgins.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to kind of also ask questions what Chair Lee was asking about RPT. So I did get a few emails about assessments, and then I just looked up mine, my grandma's, and my parents'. So our assessment went up about $1 million. So did my grandma's, went up about $1 million. And then my parents doubled in the last 10 years. In the next 10 years, what are we going to look like? What is our assessment values going to look like for Maui County? I read, I think in the beginning of the budget, it's like going to be $160 billion. And what are we going to do to prepare for that? Like, to Chair Lee's point, we have all these carryover funds. We keep growing our EPs. We're going to be this gigantic government. What are we going to do to kind of better balance? Knowing that majority of our money comes from RPT, the assessments have never gone down. It's only doubled in the last 10 years. So in the next 10 years, what are we going to do?
Department.
If we keep growing like this?
Thank you, Chair. So historically, in my 30-year career, we've had long periods of times where assessments either stayed stable or they decreased. So they do fluctuate, but this run that we've been on since about 2011, in my 30-year career, is the longest, or it's 35 years, I guess, is the longest I've seen. Right now, early projections appear to indicate that values have plateaued, which perhaps is why we're getting these calls, because normally when you read your assessment, you're like, oh, I could sell my house for way more because it's already gone up over the 6 months between the date of value and the date the notice is set. Where right now, I think we're probably on the mark, is what we believe right now. But, you know, you have your tax relief, targeted tax relief. We have rate setting, and we now have tiers, and we have classification. So you're right, if the values go up more than, say, people's personal incomes, we need to somehow equalize or mitigate those increases. And we have a number of tools to do that. You know, we have like our circuit breaker rates, but then we also have exemptions. So right now, exemptions are as of January 1. So the current $300,000 exemption was set last year.
Yep.
Right. So if you wanted to change that, then you could do that between now and, probably should do it between now and maybe October.
Okay.
Would be for the next year.
Okay.
Yes.
My grandma, and I love her to death, but she is probably going through some dementia now that she's a little bit older, and she just cannot fathom that her property is valued at about $2 million. It is not something she legitimately can comprehend, and having to explain that to her and why her property taxes are going up. And granted, you know, it's been in our family for a very, very long time. So, you know, it has no necessary monetary value because we will never actualize on it. It'll never be sold. But it is probably, as we know, our demographic here is very old. It's going to be an interesting thing to see our older demographic understand what property values are, and that inflation is going to be bananas. But thank you, I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, Member Sinensi, and then Member Rollins-Fernandez has joined us after. Member Sinensi.
Thank you, Chair. And I too wanted to follow up on Shirley's question about reimbursements to property owners. And I wasn't sure, are these reimbursements, can they be more equitable for people regardless if their homeowner status? And does it also include renters or short-term rent owners?
Department.
Well, for this coming fiscal year, nobody has paid yet, so you have the different classifications where you could target rate reductions in certain classifications. And, you know, a tax credit would be a manual process to give everyone a lump sum. And I think the city and county of Honolulu did that a few years back. But if that was where this was going, council would propose a bill, and then we would discuss the logistics and how that would be administratively handled.
Okay, thank you for that. And then, did I see in your presentation that the first tier began at $1 million? Is that a change from 800,000?
It went to 1.3 million from 1 million. And the goal there was that the number of people who are just in tier 1 remained the same year over year.
Oh, okay. And then my last question was, what percentage of the budget, again, is funded from grant subsidies? versus GET, TAT, and property taxes.
Department.
Just an estimate.
Is it Ms.
I'm
Milner?
going to defer to, yes, the budget director.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councilmember Sinensi. I don't have the exact percentage right now, but the grant revenue fund for this year is $357,646,395.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Director. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I wonder if the department could do this. Wonderful pie charts, and it's really hard to read whatever you write in the colors. So could we send a letter asking the departments for what the numbers are that's in the pie chart, just for the members' information in the future? And let's see. Oh, I'm sorry. Member Rollins Fernandez. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
Mahalo. Mahalo for the presentation of Finance Department. Okay, so in opening remarks, it was the $300,000 homeowners exemption was described as generous. And I think, as you know, we're hearing from the council members, I personally wouldn't necessarily describe it as generous. I would describe it as necessary in order to adjust so that our residents aren't, priced out. So necessary to align with our goals. My question for Finance Director Martin, in this meeting, so in this public meeting, because I've been getting the same emails as the other council members, and it takes time to respond individually to each one, explaining how our property taxes work. Property taxes are assessments times the rate, and that's what the taxes are. Assessments are done through real property tax division, using the market approach method, comparable sales in the area. So I was hoping that perhaps you could explain a little bit more about how the RPAD determines assessments, and then council's ability or lever to adjust in order to not price out our residents is the rates and the exemptions that we provide. And not everywhere in Maui County are land values inflated. It really is Maui Island. And if you could comment, Director, on why, what are some of the factors involved that causing the inflated value of, or the increased value of the land assessments.
Thank you, Chair. So your assessment should be what you could reasonably sell your house for as of July 1. So the Real Property Assessment Division looks at all the sales from the past year, preferably, but sometimes they go back 3 years. So that information is available to the public on MauiPropertyTax.com. When you look up your property, you can go to the bottom of the screen and click on Find Sales. I would highly encourage any taxpayer to call the Real Property Assessment Division during this time. So that period between March 15th and April 9th, it is all hands on deck. You can call or you can come in and discuss. And the reason why it's so important to, if you have questions, is that we'll review your property, we'll review that everything's accurate, we'll review your mailing address, we'll tell you about tax relief programs. So it's very important to speak to the source. And yes, there are many tools to mitigate tax increases Now we have the tiers. The council has the ability to adjust tiers. They have the ability to adjust rates and then set the exemption for the future year. And as I mentioned, the circuit breaker program is needs-based, income-based. And the council passed, I mentioned the ordinance number, it was, well, it was in June 24, 5681, which increased the circuit breaker credit and eased the qualifying criteria. And that's really important to look at every year, just like the exemption and the tiers and the rates. So because we've experienced so much appreciation, it's important to take a comprehensive look at the program. And the appreciation is largely due to demand. The county isn't seeing much difference than what's happening in the general United States. There has been upward pressure on real property throughout the country, and it feeds on each other. People move from state to state, and I'm not sure, Carrie, did you want to say something? I'll defer to Carrie just to make a statement.
Yeah, I think Marcy touched upon, Ms. Martin touched upon almost at all, assessed values are at 100% market value as of July 1st. So we are looking back at.
Oop. Try another. Oh, there.
Hold on, we're having some mic issues.
Can you speak into it?
Mahalo.
Oh, okay.
Okay, there we go. So yes, so assessed values are at 100% market value. So we're looking at the comparables that happen in your neighborhood and if we need to, surrounding neighborhoods. But please call Real Property. We have a whole staff ready and available to help. We are trying our best to keep up with demand and answer every taxpayer in a very timely manner so that we can make sure that they qualify for every exemption, that all the property characteristics are correct. We want to make sure we have everything correct when we assess these properties. Thank you.
Chair. Mahalo for your response. Oh, there's more information?
Do you have more information? Okay. All right. Are you done? Member Rollins-Fernandez?
Yeah, mahalo for that response. That was pretty thorough. And I just wanted to add again, like not everywhere in the county, the land values have increased because of demand. Some places have actually gone down.
Okay. That would be first round of questions, and I have one before I turn it over again for the second round of 2 minutes. So, real property tax, because we're talking about this, can you give the phone number that people should call in case they have questions?
The phone number you can call is 808-270-7297.
Okay.
Or you can email us as well. And the email is rpa@co.maui.hi.us.
Okay, very good. And I know it's
Chair,
on
before
your website.
point of information.
Member Paulton.
Oh, I just had a point of information. I'm not sure why they didn't mention it, but they have a really good assessment video on their website and the County of Maui Real Property Tax. And it explains, the assessors are not the bad guys, and how it's done and why it's done to make things fair. So if guys have questions, they can go watch the video. It's very informative.
Good point. Okay. So, wait, okay, go ahead, Member Kama.
Can you please repeat the email address for people to email you?
Of course. It's rpa@co.maui.hi.us.
And the phone number again?
And the phone number would be 808-270-7297. Thank you.
Okay, and the RPT staff is standing by, right, to answer any questions. Very good. I wonder if you could, for the public's information, also explain circuit breaker department.
Okay, so circuit breaker is a income-based exemption that is given. So we take a look at your adjusted gross income. So if your adjusted gross income it's basically you pay 2% of your adjusted gross income. You do need to have the homeowner's exemption. That's very important for 3 out of the last 5 years. And your building value needs to meet certain criteria to get the full 100% circuit breaker exemption.
Okay, that's it. You want to say anything else, Director?
I'll make one more comment that the application for the circuit breaker program starts August 1st and it's through December 31st each year. So it's not a full year application period.
Okay, and they can apply with your department, right?
Yes, you apply with the Treasury Division.
Okay, with the Treasury Division. Okay. Now, Shirley.
Thank you. I'm not sure who this is for, but I received a complaint from a young buyer of an affordable house. So we're going to have to figure out a way. Either we work on an ordinance or you work on the ordinance, only because you understand the operations of it. So this person bought an affordable home and was supposed to take occupancy in October of last year. But because the permit office did not release the permit until after December, he wasn't able to get an exemption. Yeah, but just remember, these affordable homes are required by an ordinances, which would be law. So it's, in all fairness, anybody who has an affordable home and is going to occupy it should be entitled to the homeowner's, the owner-occupant classification. In this case, he wasn't able to get that because they didn't get the permit yet. But yet, by law, he has to be an owner-occupant. Now, the difference that was paid, he, as a non-owner occupant, he had to pay $3,900, which he almost wanted to die because he's barely making it to buy the house. Now that he has his exemption, he's going to pay $680, which is way beyond, is closer to what he can afford. So do you see that as something that we can work on together?
Department.
Sure, thank you. So back in November 2024, we received a request from Budget, Finance, and Economic Development to be working on potential code amendments for the discussions that we had. I think they were in October and November. We did the 7B. And so we are just about ready for that. And we will, we've addressed a few things because that was addressed in that meeting. So that will be forthcoming. But probably, you know, like everything with real property, it will need to be addressed sooner than later, probably right after budget. It should be looked at this summer so that it gives people time to apply.
All right, thank you.
Okay. So Member Rollins Fernandez is now on Mokulele, so she now left the meeting, but she'll return. So members, if I could, I noticed that the carryover savings in Bill 41, 2025 did not match the amounts provided in the response to BD2 the budget office too? And are there additional amounts included in the budget that were not reflected in your response in BD2?
Thank you, Chair. As we stated in the letter, BD2, in addition to the spreadsheet that was provided, there were some additional revenues based on the actuals to date in fiscal year 25 that were included as part of the carryover savings. This includes additional investment revenues, some additional categories where we are trending a little higher, as you saw in the graphs provided by the Department of Finance. So those additional revenues were also included in carryover savings along with the FY24.
Okay, so in particular, the committee received from the administration Bill number 15, 2025, of which the administration certified 51 million of funds. And that amount of carryover savings, recognized as carryover savings in this bill, was not recognized in your communication to us. Can you please explain?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, after the committee chose to move forward on Bill 17, I consulted with the mayor, the managing director, and the director and deputy of finance. As we stated during that meeting in February, it was Bill 15 or Bill 17, not both. And so because the committee decided to move forward, we submitted a request to the committee to rescind that bill. And we are considering that 51 million as part of the carryover savings that was submitted in the FY26 budget.
So you took funds that you certified to us in 25 and you stuffed it in 26? It's already been certified.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it was certified, but the committee chose not to move forward, so those funds were not included as a request to withdraw that bill was submitted.
What does that mean, Chair?
Director.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councilmember Kama. It means that we would like, well, no, that's not the appropriate way to say it. We're requesting that the body, although they deferred the bill, not take action on the bill and file it. The administration is no longer requesting any action on that bill because it's no longer necessary.
Okay. So somebody gave you, Member Kama, $51 million in this transaction, and also asked us to raise the debt ceiling of the bond level. Right, which is what the meeting was about. And they gave us two bills.
Mm-hmm.
We chose to do Chair Lee's recommendation, or we increased the bond cap
To 250.
is what we did. So this 51 million is still sitting with council. It's still sitting in our pocket, right? It's not the administration's. They gave it to us. And here we have a budget before us, sort of balanced. There's some discrepancies, but sort of balanced, but in general. And to me, there's a $51 million question mark. And I want the members to think about this on what we want to do about this. It's kind of unusual. I've never seen it happen before. But this administration has given us a lot of carryover savings bills, right?
Mm-hmm.
Budget amendments, by trying to do a lot of work at the last minute, asking all of us to do things, which we have. We've accommodated the administration and pushed things through. This last council meeting, Chair Lee, first reading, we had 7 committee reports. Amazing, a lot. And the OCS staff pushed out committee reports to get us to first reading at your meeting within the period from my BFED meeting to your meeting, and put all these bills on for first reading. This one bill is still hanging in our committee, BFED, not taking action. The 51 million certified funds is still sitting with us, in my interpretation. And so, any comments, members? Chair Lee.
Could Peter make a comment on that?
Mr. Hanano.
So based on the current, I mean, I don't want to get into Bill 51, Bill 15 in detail because that's not on the agenda. But, you know, the bill is still pending before committee. And because, you know, funds are certified, which is attached to the bill, technically, you know, those funds are still with the committee. But like I said, I don't want to go into detail about that bill. You know, the effect that has on the budget, because it sounds like it was included in the budget, that's, you know, I mean, that's for council to decide what to do with that issue. But
Peter, what are our options?
I think the options are to figure out what's going to happen with Bill 15. And as far as the budget, I would have to, you know, confer with, you know, my staff as far as what will happen with the budget.
Okay. Member Cook.
Thank you, Chair. So is this $51 million part of the reason why we went from the previous last year's budget?
1.5.
The carryover savings was 50 million. And this year it's 122 million.
Who wants to answer that?
I will, Chair.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councilmember Cook. So part of the reason that it went from 50 million to 122 is in FY 24, we recognized 55 million in carryover savings early, basically, to address wildfire reconstruction issues. So without those wildfire costs, we would have had over 100 million in carryover savings last fiscal year as well.
So the budget amendments that were coming through were whittling down that carryover savings?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councilmember Cook. Yes, as the carryover savings bills come through, the available carryover savings for the succeeding year goes down.
Thank you for your answer. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions regarding this? Okay, so I'm going to change subject, and we are going to figure this out. I think it's a problem. Administration does not think it's a problem, obviously. And I think we want to do what is right? So we've got the budget. I looked at it. I thought, wow, what's going on? What happened to this $51 million? And I would like us to address it. Member Johnson, and then I'll continue.
Chair, if you'll allow me to ask a question on a separate issue, I wanted to finish this conversation first.
Oh, okay.
This is for the department in regards to I'm so happy that they hired some more staff, but one of my questions to them is in regards to would they be interested in including recruitment and retention pay to help continue bringing their staff numbers up? I know water and planning department have done, you know, recruitment and retention pay. What say them? Are there any issues with that?
Department?
We are open to all options available to us.
That's it? Okay, well, if it's there and we're struggling with keeping folks on and there's nothing in your way, I really would hope that you guys would do that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, good question, right? Because EP and personnel is very important. I agree with you. I also want to refer you to communication that we got from the department. And over the years that I've been in council, I used to always hear about it's very expensive to hire EPs or to add EPs. And very cautiously in the past, we've done it. So every time you spend $1, according to the communication from the finance department, there is another 98 cents or 98% on top of that. So $1 is really getting closer to $2 every time you add on because of the fringe and because of the benefits. And what I think is very fortunate that we work for the county and we get these additional benefits because of decisions made in the past and the present. So, you know, your EP questions are very good, and it is something that we need to look at very carefully. Going back to Bill 15, if you want to look at more information, can you check BD 2, number 2, in Granicus? That'll give you more information. Members, I'm going to bring up this conversation again as we try to figure out what is the best thing to do with $51 million that's unaccounted for in our books, but accounted for in administration's books. And Mr. Hanano, if you could confer with the staff and Corp Counsel and I guess Attorney Kawasaki too, since, you know, she's expert in a lot of things, and we can figure out where we are with this. Mr. Hanano.
Yes, Chair. We'll do that.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Because we need to resolve it. Okay, members, so any more questions? Member Paulton.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a question for the Budget Director.
Go ahead.
I guess, so the question is, if we file that bill, would that resolve the situation?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councilmember Paulton. I would defer to the OCS attorneys. To my mind, yes, but I will let them guide you on your selected next steps. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Hanano, if we file the bill, would that resolve the situation?
Well, if the bill is filed, then that means, you know, that the 51 million will be basically freed up. And, you know, I would say, yes, that would basically end up where it is right now in the proposed budget.
Okay, because from what I heard Ms. Milner say, they gave us options, which I like options, and we took one of the options to resolve the problem of the debt ceiling, and we left the other option on the table. So it seems fair that if we took one option, we file the other option, and then we move along. Because we all like to go home and eat dinner with our families.
So we're not going to solve this now. As Mr. Hanano said, he's going to review it with the powers to be and OCS and Corp Counsel, whoever they need to talk to. But I just wanted to bring it up as a thing for the members to think about. Do your research, look at BD2. And it was a question that I thought of immediately when I looked at the mayor's proposed budget. So I'm going to actually defer further action on this as well as the budget in general. And our meeting is going to end closer to 12 o'clock. Oh, no. Right. We have one more thing. So members, we did ask you, and then I'll go to you because I think it was you that has. We asked any of you what departments you did not think we need to hear from as you reviewed all the budget documents. And if you could submit it to us in writing, and Member U Hodgins had a comment.
Thank you. Actually, I'm not, can we ask just nearly any question that's just related to the budget in general right now?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay, great. I wasn't too sure if it was appropriate, but considering what happened last Friday, where the majority of admin and council received raises, considering I think HGA is in the middle of negotiation, potentially fire, which I can't vote on, might receive some sort of settlement. Where in the budget can we account for all of that increase in funding?
Department.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councilmember Hodgins. And we do have a letter in writing on this that we will send a response this week. But as Deputy Director Zielinski stated during the presentation, we have included that under countywide costs, under that salary adjustments and terminal salary line item. We do believe we have significant funding included there to cover whatever the CBA agreements end up being, and the majority of the director increases, and we believe we'll have enough savings in fringe from vacancies to cover any difference between what we set aside and what was ultimately voted on by the Salary Commission. Thank you, Chair.
were you guys prepared for what happened on Friday? Like not necessarily emotionally prepared, but like, you know?
Thank you, Chair. We had set aside enough, I believe, to cover if they voted on the 50th percentile. The 75th was a bit of a surprise, but as I said, we believe we have enough funding to cover those increases already included in the budget.
Okay, and then what's the status on HGEA's negotiation? Do we know?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councilmember Hodgins. I believe all of the collective bargaining negotiations are still ongoing.
Okay.
I can't remember if they're all at an impasse, but I know they're still talking about it. I believe in PS 1 or 2, Director Razo Porter provided an update on the status of all the negotiating, or all the collective bargaining negotiations.
How do you think the increase payments on Friday is going to impact the settlements and the negotiations?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councilmember Hodgins. I'm not certain how it will, considering it's a statewide negotiation, although I know some of the other counties have also received increases and the state legislators, or not, yes. But what the unions will choose to do with their requests in light of these increases remains to be seen.
I mean, I would think so, because that's what I would do if I were them, but. You know, thanks.
Yep, it definitely was interesting timing, but we did not control that timing. So I think when Director Zielinski presented, you did say that in your calculations, you do have some, and where was it in your chart? The considerations for salary increases that we go through negotiations now for all of our employees.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's in countywide and it's under terminal pay. I can get you the page, but it's we put in $12 million.
Okay, I see it.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was the one where you had the graph where it was low and then you have this big spike for this fiscal 26.
Okay.
Yes.
So in that, this council, we did a resolution to support the only union that we have not covered yet with COVID hazard pay relief is fire. But we've done all the other unions, and I want to tell you that the other counties have not done so. So we have just fire. So I wondered if in that calculation, have you also included fire?
Chair, yes, some funding was included in the event that there is a resolution with the fire union in that same line item.
Okay, very good. Yeah, very good. So that's a question that Member Hodgins couldn't ask. But that finishes off the sentence. All right, members, anything else? Member Paulton.
Thank you. I just had couple more questions for finance. Last year there was a subdivision construction revolving fund. Public Works thought it was discontinued in 2016, but that didn't account for the fiscal year 22 transactions. Can you bring us up to speed on what ultimately happened with that? And then I had one other question. I can say the other question too in case my time runs out is it's regarding the unfulfilled employee housing obligations of McKenna Resort and Cebu, Hawaii.
Department, do you have an answer or shall we send it in writing?
Chair, I'm wondering if Budget Director she may be aware of that. I'm not familiar with that.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councilmember Paulton. I do recall the conversation from last year, but if you could send that question in writing so that I can pull the current reports and get you the accurate numbers, I would appreciate it.
Okay, the Cebu question is already in writing. The other question, does your staff need me to repeat it, Chair Sugimura?
Yeah, could you repeat it? They're nodding their heads. Can you repeat your first question and your second?
Oh, the second one is already in writing on FN4. I just was really interested in the answer. But the first question is in regards to the subdivision construction revolving fund. I think the subject object code might be 101311. Public Works mentioned that they thought it was discontinued in fiscal year 2016, but that didn't explain the fiscal year 22 transaction. So just what went on with all of that.
They're nodding their head. Okay, so we'll send that in writing. Thank you very much. Okay, members. Any other questions, members? See none. I'm going to defer this item so that we can continue talking about it. This afternoon at 4:30, all the rest of your department questions are due to staff, so please forward that. Tomorrow we have the mayor's office as well as we have personnel together, and meeting will start at 9, go to 4. And then tomorrow night is, at 6 o'clock, is a residency area meeting at the Hannibal Tavares Community Center. So that will be the first residency area meeting. And remember, this meeting is now adjourned. Whoa, wait. Oh, yeah, department, sorry. Your department. Which department did you not want to hear
Oh, I
from?
thought we were going to do it in writing, but I can tell you.
Yeah.
I think we discussed this at the last meeting, but I don't think I need to hear from East Maui Water Authority prosecuting, no, I'll hear from prosecuting, county auditor, county services, and county clerk. But I think
East Maui auditor and what?
OCS and county clerk.
OCS and OCC.
That's what that's only for me, but.
In writing, thanks for doing that.
Thank you.
Member Paulton has her hand up.
If liquor and prosecuting attorney answers our questions in writing, I'm okay with not having those. But
liquor.
If liquor answered our questions that we sent, okay. Yeah, I don't need liquor prosecuting attorney. If they answer our written questions, I'm okay too with that. And I was wondering what's for dinner.
That's at your house.
No, tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow. Oh, I have my upcountry sweetbread and chicken heka, rice, salad. See you at 5 o'clock for dinner.
And then if we don't take up those that we just mentioned, is the calendar gonna be adjusted, or we just scratch them out?
Yeah, we'll adjust the calendar. Yeah, we have to adjust the calendar. There's a lot of departments. Okay, so in review, I just need your consensus, members. So we'll not hear from East Maui Water Authority, auditors, Office of Council Services, Office of County Clerk, liquor, prosecuting attorney, but everybody has to submit responses to the questions that were sent to them, right, before we would delete them. No objections, okay.
I thought Chair Lee wanted council services because she wanted to make changes or something. You're good?
I'm good.
Okay, perfect.
Member Kama. You want to hear from council services? Yeah. Okay, so council services is back on.
Okay.
Anybody else, members? Okay, we're good.
Yep.
So do we still need it in writing? No? Okay, so we got it. We're going to send an adjusted calendar. I don't know, we'll talk about it. This meeting is now adjourned at 12:02.